I said it in the past, but I don't get into things because of romance. Obviously, when reading or watching something that is labeled as a romance, I'm going to be aware that there is a romance, but if I'm looking for something new to get into, personally, romance isn't the first thing I look for. That's not to say that I don't enjoy romance in, like, a story or that I actively avoid it. For example, when starting the Magnus Archives, I didn't know that Jonathan Sims and Martin Blackwood would eventually get together when I first got into it. I only found out sometime after listening to the first, 7 episodes that was going to be a thing, and they ended up becoming one of my all-time favorite fictional pairings. I love their dynamic and the development that they both have together, and I appreciate that it's a slow burn rather than just Johnny and Alex reaching season 2 and going, "Quick, we need these two men to kiss!" I do like romance, but it's one of those things where I couldn't put a label on what draws me to one. Only that it's gotta have the right kind of spice. Not in the sexy way, just that it needs a little something. And the best way to see your kind of particular taste in something is to make it yourself, but sometimes you just kind of accidentally stumble into doing that. And since it's February and Valentine's Day is a thing, I decided, hey, why not talk about the couple that I made up in my noggin last year and gush about them for this video. I'm talking about Denver, Artie, and Moriarty. I'll be talking about them, how I came about to write what I wanted from a romance story, and perhaps maybe you'll learn a thing or two about writing your own. Listen, this is my channel, I get to make excuses to yap about my OCs. The process of learning through watching and listening and all of that. And of course the art for these will be of these 3 characters. Because if I'm gonna make a video about talking about these guys, I gotta also draw art about these guys. So let's get started. For anyone who doesn't know, Denver, Artie, and Moriarty are from what I lovingly call my sandbox project, Ashendo. If you haven't seen my Ashendo intro video, Ashendo is a story about characters experiencing their own end of the world. It is a place for me to explore personal tragedies set in a world that is trying to claw itself back together, all while still experiencing the consequences of what broke it in the first place. There is a lot of lore and world building things that I'll be mentioning in this video that are in that initial Ashendo introduction video, so I recommend watching it if anything I talk about confuses you, just so I don't have to go through the process of re-explaining my own lore. In Ashendo, there is a school called Academy de Capo, a Cordian magic school that has since gained a population of refugees fleeing from their old villages after those who have become divine have destroyed them. It is also the starting point where a lot of characters' plots come together, as it's where the original device that is used to halt divinity was created by one of the school's professors, Tia Forte. Again, if this confuses you, you should go watch that Ashendo video. The Capo is important in this conversation because it is where both Denver and Artie work as professors, and is the place where they first met. Now originally I was going to talk about these characters in order of creation, as I did make a video talking about Denver before, or at least talking about their story while they were just a Magnus Archives OC, and Artie and Moriarty are a much newer pair of characters than Denver is, but I feel like the best way to talk about this particular story is to start where it actually started, which was after Denver the Spiral Avatar, but before Denver the Professor at Academy de Capo, and focus on what started this whole trail of writing a tragic romance that intrigues me. So we're going to talk about Moriarty Cord. Moriarty started off as a character that came to my head on a whim of a simple concept. Scientist type character who is also a mushroom hive mind. In my day-to-day, I usually let my thoughts focus on whatever, and if it involves me making characters, I usually let the ideas sit for a bit until it really grabs me and I have something I can put down. It's easy for me to come up with character ideas, but unless I immediately know what I want to do with them, those ideas live in my head until they finally go down on paper, and sometimes they just never do. My OC Ping, for example, was a character who I finally started drawing art of around the beginning of 2025, but has been living in my noggin since about summer of 2024. Basically, I got a lot of little guys living up in my head, but unless something sticks, they're gonna have to be there for quite a while. I have plenty of Ashendo characters in my mind who I do want to make more story stuff for, but they just haven't freshly brewed quite the right way yet. Moriarty lived in my head for about 3 days before I had to draw this guy. Ashendo's lore was still very bare bones. The 2 pantheons of the Courts and the Cardinals existed, a handful of the characters were established in the story, but I wasn't completely sure how I wanted to tie it all together, and was in the process of brainstorming and thinking about how the world worked. Gods were inflicted with a blight, and the way they decided to handle it ruined the world, but what does a hive mind scientist character have to do with the setting? A lot of my process with coming up with storylines for Ashendo has been when I built the basis for the basics of the magic system, me going, well, what if this happens? Well, why can't this happen? Well, how does this work? Well, what if it goes this way? And that has since led me to establish some storylines and continue on other storylines I had previously been working on, while continuing them in interesting directions. Again, Ashendo is my sandbox. I play with it how I want to. In this world, I was thinking, well, okay, well, if Moriarty is a hive mind, how does that work? Like, do hive minds exist, or is Moriarty a special case? Maybe the scientist had an experiment that went wrong. Maybe the fungus the scientist is affected with is divine and it went haywire and gained a consciousness of its own. I brainstormed it a lot, but in the end we have Moriarty covered, so what's his deal? Moriarty is a calm and calculating figure, one that radiates an uncanny, just pleasant air. Anyone who just met him would say he is very annoyingly pleasant, but the thing is, with the exception of one person, nobody who has actually met Moriarty has actually survived a meeting with him, and that's only if they get past the drones he possesses. Moriarty has, on the surface, a noble goal in mind. He wants to cure the gods of light and replace the space it occupies with something else. This causes him to be very protective of his research, cautious, and in the case of uninvited trespassers, deadly. Over the time, since his own case of divinity, Moriarty has amassed a small group of victims who know act as mindless drones. Technically, the body he speaks from is also a drone, but since it acts as a mouthpiece to the larger fungal system itself, this body gets speaking privileges. I also, while writing the script, kind of been re-listening to the Sheridan tapes and realized I may have unconsciously taken some inspiration from Amanita when I made him. Mushroom High Mind with a soul main host who has created so many followers is just so pleasant to be around. Give Moriarty a cult of his own and they can be besties! Moriarty's overall personality has influences from his victims as well, and because of that, he's gradually changed over time as new knowledge and experiences influenced how he acts and adds onto the original personality he started off with. I also want to clarify, I don't mean this in the way of like somebody who has DID would. Moriarty is not plural, just that the more people he has incorporated into his system, the more traits and feelings he just can pick and choose from with how he wants to overall be. He's basically just like, I have a big group of people, I'm gonna take bits of their personality that I like and I'm gonna take it all for myself. Yay! And although he has this calm persona, he can still be very silly, almost childish, but in a very cruel way. I want to talk more about this later in the video when I get to his and Denver's dynamics, but I have two more characters to introduce before I could completely round out Moriarty's personality. So up next we're going to talk about, for the second time in less than a year, Denver Lowe. Denver becoming a character in Ashendo happened by complete accident on top of just like right timing. I was thinking about my fan comic, Not Quite Somewhere Else, and some stuff, and was thinking about after that comic is done and what I want to do with the rest of my Magnus Archives OCs. Funny enough, after I wrote this script, but in between when I finished writing the script and me recording this, I figured out what I was going to do with Heaven in Ashendo. I'm putting Heaven in Ashendo, which is funny because I just introduced him as like a new antagonist and Not Quite Somewhere Else. You should go read my fan comic. I get to play with toys. Anyway, I had already come up with what I wanted to do for Cecilia, as she is the other Magnus Archives OC of mine who is also Not Quite Somewhere Else, who is also going to be in Ashendo. And there's a couple of characters that were Magnus Archives OCs of mine that I stuck into minor roles in Harmony. But I didn't have a solid idea for the rest of them, and Denver was going to be a character that I really needed to figure out what would fit for Denver, because I enjoy Denver as a character, but the settings gotta be right. I can't just stick them in the story and be like, you live here now, it's gotta fit, it's gotta work. And there are some things with Denver that I wanted to keep that I felt was very important to Denver's character. Denver's bullyable energy, their loneliness and craving to be seen, and their snarky, I know better attitude, how they tend to be a bit selfish when it comes to their own self-preservation. A nerd, if you will. Whatever setting that they were going to be in, it had to fit them, and I wasn't exactly sure what that looked like yet. So I was thinking about this at the time when I made Moriarty, and I thought, well, what if Denver was Moriarty's outside contact? A character like Moriarty, who easily stands out due to the fungus growing out of his head, plus his possessiveness over his own research, needs someone to go out and about to bring news and supplies to his lair, and Denver is the most perfect candidate for that role. Denver is also a coward, so being threatened to do things by people who seem more powerful than them would absolutely be on the cards. But then I came to another problem I had. Why would Denver stick around? I always had Denver be a pretty selfish character. Since part of their whole thing was that nobody was really close to them, Denver only really ever thought about themselves and their mother, at least while she was alive. Fear is a very good motivator, yes, but if they're allowed to just come and go whenever, wherever, what is stopping them from just leaving that area for good and going as far away as they can, especially if their captor refuses to go too far away from his own den? Then I started thinking, well, what if Moriarty was someone more to them than that? The only important person ever established in Denver's life that was important to them was Denver's mother, so what if there was somebody else? I don't think Denver would do this for a friend, and I don't think it's not because I don't think a friendship could be strong enough for someone to put themselves in Denver's shoes, but specifically because I don't think it would be a good enough reason for Denver. Call it a character intuition. They're a lonely guy who the only person they could say they love in any capacity, again, was their mom! And behave selfishly towards their own interests in a majority of ways a lot of the time. So, Denver would say their colleagues are their friends, but if any of them were the ones who were the hive mind monster, Denver would not stick around. Denver's sexuality, even back when Denver was a Magnus Archives OC, has always been a bit of an enigma to me. I didn't really think too much about it, but if you gunned ahead had to ask me what it would be, I couldn't tell you. I didn't think they were completely Arrow Ace, but I also didn't really know if they would be Gray Ace. That this indecision has always worked for them in my mind, because while they were a Spiral Avatar, it's like, oh yeah, a guy can't make up an idea of what their sexuality would be. That's perfect for a Spiral Avatar. So if this person was able to fall into that slight little niche, I guess Denver would have a first crush. And so then it's like all comes down to, well, if Denver does have somebody that they were in love with, what would that be like? And this person had to be close to Denver in a way that nobody else has ever had been to them. And for this mysterious person, Denver has to be just as close to this mysterious person for Moriarty to want to keep Denver around. And that started getting the gears turning, leading to the final character I'll be introducing in this video, Artie Cord. Artie is almost the complete opposite to Moriarty in terms of everything except in body and name. Artie is loud, easygoing person who brings sunlight into every room, metaphorically speaking. Artie is a curious individual who wants to get to know everything and everyone, and his goal at the Capo was to help expand the research already being conducted there. If divinity can be stopped before it can take hold, maybe there is a possibility that they could cure the gods of blight as well. Artie wants to see the world more, have the opportunity to see what else life can offer, and he has the ridiculously long lifespan of an elf to do it. But with the possibility of a god destroying the peace at any moment, and the destructive rage of the divine, seeing the world freely only remains a dream. And if the likes of Tia can halt the progression of a god's blessing, then maybe, just maybe, Artie can save the gods himself. Colin plans a grandeur, but his goals are not because he wishes to be a hero. Artie simply wants to give Kanta back to everyone. So how would a pocket full of sunshine and the most bullyable non-binary person come a couple? Well, said non-binary person will stick around to hang out with the mushroom puppeting their lover's corpse. Well, now I'll get talking about how it all came together. Kanta is in ruins. The world outside is ravaged by the divine. The Cords, unworried by the destruction their gifts bring, continue to bestow them upon their victims, all in the name of self-preservation. While the Cardinals are nowhere to be found, more divine emerge from under the surface of Kanta, weirder than their surface counterparts. The orderly god hunters manage to cull the numbers, but despite their efforts, it's not enough to stop them. Academy de Capo sees its trickle of newcomers, more so now that homes are being destroyed, and the woman and her child that come through the city gates are no different. The widowed Miss Lowe and her child Denver are offered a place to stay, and when Denver is old enough, Like all people who enter the Academy's gates, they are given the opportunity to participate in the school itself, learning skills in the magical arts and how to use them to benefit Cordian society. As a student, Denver found a knack for cartomancy, and after years of study, found himself a position as a professor at the Capo, training the newest generations of cartomancers. Denver settled in this mundane life, not seeking anything outside of it. Denver found the outside world of the Capo's walls dark and pitiful, the orderly god hunters too brutish, and seeing nothing worth keeping or working towards outside of the Capo. Although Denver isn't particularly close to their colleagues, they respect them, enough at least to stand in as a temporary conductor-instructor when the old professor decided to finally retire. Though Denver never really cared enough to find out where the old Stillborn decided to spend what was left of her first life at. But they could watch the class until a suitable replacement was found, and the school's curator found that replacement in the bright, excitable elf that introduces himself to Denver as Artie Cord. And please, never Moriarty. He hates being called Moriarty. From a faraway city, Artie heard of the strides and research another professor has made in divinity, and Artie came as soon as he could. He found the work fascinating, hopeful even, and wants to do everything he can to push the research as far as it can go, for surely there is a way to make Kanta a safer place again. And Denver does not care for any of it. That doesn't stop Artie from bothering them, and although the two don't have the same ideas about what the future of the world entails, they both can agree on one thing: magical theory. And so what became hallway passing banter became longer conversations about magical uses, studying and teaching techniques, academia, and theories about just pushing magic to limits that they never thought could possibly be reached before. For although Denver doesn't see the hope for the future, they can agree on one thing: the creation of an actual usable paradox does open the door for new uses of magic, and ones that they never possibly have considered before. If a paradox can become usable, what else is out there? And through these talks, Denver's first impression of Artie being this annoying, naive newcomer went away to be replaced with seeing Artie as an equally intellectual individual, someone who can meet them on their level, even if their goals are, admittedly, a bit lofty. Despite not agreeing on him whether or not they could cure the gods of blight, Artie still decided to keep Denver in the loop on his own research. Denver was prickly, a bit snobbish and selfish, and overall not the most welcoming person to be around, but under all that, Artie can see someone who does want to care, but doesn't really have a reason to. The current world is harsh, and there was already one disaster in Denver's past that has only solidified that to them. Why aim for the stars when they're nothing more than distant lights that probably have already burnt out? Artie thought Denver was the kind of person worth being around, and besides, he likes a good challenge. Academic debates became casual hangouts and later ended up leading to a couple of day trips outside of the Capo, something Denver never did if they could help it. The years they end up spending together led to catch feelings, and eventually that becomes a different kind of relationship. Artie's presence was something in Denver's life they were surprised to find was becoming precious to them. Whereas before Denver's outlook of the world was bleak and undeterminedly uninspired, Artie gave Denver something they'd never thought they'd ever have. Hope that maybe a better world can exist. That maybe that they could want more than was already been given to them. And to Denver, that was both exciting and terrifying. Not striving for a better tomorrow was safe, and if you didn't fight for anything better, then you didn't have to face the pain of losing it. And here was this elf that came into their life and somehow had convinced them that taking that chance is worth it. I always saw them as the one falls first, the other falls harder kind of couple. Artie definitely got a crush on Denver first, but when Denver started reciprocating his feelings, it definitely was like being hit by a truck. It absolutely took them a long time to realize they liked Artie romantically, and when they did, they got very embarrassed about it. Like, what do you mean I have a crush? I don't get crushes. This is terrible. I have never had this happen before. What the hell? Definitely is the kind of person who from that one meme, who hands their crush a note that says, "Get out of my school." Absolutely that kind of person. There's a lot of stuff I can go on to for the years they were together, but most of it is stuff I'm currently working on in the back burner. I have other characters who work or have worked at the Capo, and some of them have ties to other characters. I already talked about Tia Forte as one of those characters, but there are other professors like Ebony Edgeworth, a magical scientist who worked with Tia on experiments to cure the divine of their divinity, but has not made much progress since Tia's disappearance, however has made his own advances in technomancy. There is Calypso Fallstrike, a history professor and a self-proclaimed magical prodigy. Unlike most magic users, she has studied every type of magic she knows of and has worked towards mastering all of them. Is she the best mage in the world? She's not bad. but she likes to toot her own horn a little too much. Then there is, of course, Curator Loki and her curious new orderly guard dog, Horace Draft. Who knows what's going on between those two? I bring them up to say that I currently do not have a set timeline for everything that happens leading up to when the story quote-unquote starts. Ashendo is my toy and I play with it how I want, and I'm not set on making anything with it yet. It's just fun to play with my toys and share them with you guys when I feel like it. That being said, let's jump to where everything started going wrong. Artie Cord's main goal for becoming a professor at Academy de Capo was to help research and develop a cure for the blight that has affected both pantheons of the gods. Of course, his path has led him to some other stuff, new friends, a partner he loves, and a position that feels fulfilling, but without anything to test and research a cure with, his main goal still lingers in his head, and he sought out an opportunity to complete it. And that chance came from a set of news given to him by Tia Forte. A new emergence is going to happen. The choir has picked a target in a nearby town, and she will be bestowing her victim with divinity. This was the moment Artie was looking for. If he could get a piece of a god herself, something he could research on, then he could probably create a cure for blight. And with the gods pulling themselves to pieces, maybe that reality is more likely than he thought. So Artie went with Tia to the emergence site, and they separated. The choir found her target, a young girl that Artie only caught a brief glance of before he enacted his plan, using the child as a distraction to carefully pull another loose piece from the god and contain it. The choir vanished, and Artie was successful, but at a cost. Tia had disappeared, and with them the girl. Artie searched for the missing pair, but he couldn't stick around for too long, not when he literally held godhood in the container with him. Defeated, Artie went home with his prize, meeting a confused and upset Denver. This was an incredibly hard blow for the school. Tia's discovery led to some way they could prevent the spread of divinity through new victims, and they were continuing their research to track the Cardinals, maybe even find a way to cure those already infected, at least to give them their minds back. But now it was lost. But there was no time to grieve for the missing prodigy. Artie had what he needed, and Tia's sacrifice had to be worth it. He had to get to work. Ruins are common in Kanta, and so it was not hard for Artie to find himself a place far enough away from the Capo where, if something went wrong, the fallout couldn't immediately reach the school, but close enough that Artie could return for anything he needed if he wanted to. About a day's journey on horse and maybe twice that long on foot. Denver knew of the lab, of course, but regarded the research with apprehension. None of them have ever had a piece of a god before. The parts of themselves that they were given away were just too volatile. A single touch causes divinity, and although Artie has managed to handle the piece he did take with care, it still was probably the most dangerous object on Kanta at that moment. Nonetheless, Artie got to work, but soon realized that without looking at a divine subject, he can't actually get far with his research. He has to see why blight can affect mortals after all, but Artie is not a monster. He wouldn't capture a divine for his experiments, and he certainly wouldn't subject someone, willing or not, to the transformation. So he decided on a safer organic subject: plant life, specifically a species of relatively unremarkable mushrooms that grow in the woods around the Capo. Artie took the smallest possible piece of the choir from the shark he had gathered and gave it to his fungal subject, and the result became catastrophic. If Artie could be relieved about anything at that moment, it's that at least Denver, or anyone, was not there when he made a mushroom divine. They would have not seen the singular mushroom explode into a growth of fungus, changing and mutating as it adapts to what was given to it, nor would they have seen when the mushroom took Artie for its own. Denver showed up to the lab to find a hunched figure. It's Artie, but something is wrong with him. He looks pale and dead, an eye bloom of fungal growths, some even poking out from his head, and that look that he gives Denver? No, that was not Artie, it couldn't be. The new monster proclaiming itself to be Moriarty Cord traps but spares Denver. They can move freely, but Moriarty needs help with his research, and if anyone happens to come by, make sure that they are not aware of what happens if they were to step too close to the central chamber where Moriarty's hulking fungal form sits, encasing that piece of godhood Artie attained a while ago. Moriarty could always use more helpers after all, and the flesh is willing. So I think for this last part we're going to talk about dynamics, because that is what is important in writing a relationship. What I like about Denver and Artie is that on the surface, they are exact opposites. On one hand, you have Sunshine, happy-go-lucky elf boy who wants to make friends and help turn the world into a better place. Yippee! And on the other, you got cynical little worm who seems to radiate misery and feels perfectly content with that being their reputation, thank you very much. With writing them, it was very important for me to figure out how they would click together. Despite me hyping up Artie's sunny nature, he also is, in fact, a huge nerd. Just the exact level of nerd that Denver needs because, Calypso, I love you, but talking about magical theory with you would probably lead to a fight or two, which probably has happened. On the less violent side of things, maybe a yelling match. That's not what Denver and Artie have. They have debates on theory, hearing the other side before inserting their own theories. A shared interest, if you will. Unlike Calypso, who has to make sure that she is right all the time, and if you say she's wrong, she will punch you. On that, they could click as friends, but what about as partners? A lot of this is just rehashed for things I said earlier, but Artie does believe that Denver isn't as prickly of a person as they tend to come off as. Denver does have the capacity to care about something bigger than themselves, but Denver also is just really scared. It's one thing if you fail at a new hobby or skill, you could try again, but failing at changing the world, that's a disappointment that Denver is not sure they would survive the failure of. I think Artie would have realized this just by being around Denver long enough, and that's what encouraged him to take them outside the campus walls. Whether it is for a short trip to a nearby city, or through walks in areas of the woods Artie thinks are nice, his own quiet way of telling Denver, but what if we don't fail? This is what would happen if we don't fail. So why not take that chance? And it ends up working, and Denver starts to maybe believe in it himself. I think these outings may be what eventually led to Denver catching feelings for Artie, and they do not know how to deal with it at all. Artie is patient though, and absolutely would have let Denver make the first move, give them the space and time they need to work up the courage to actually admit it, and eventually they do. I don't think teachers dating each other would be considered inappropriate in the Kappa. Again, what the heck is going on with Loki and Horace anyway? But I do think that there are some people who are just annoyed with it. Calypso absolutely would think romance is a waste of time compared to academic progress, but Ebony, well no. Ebony does not have feelings for Denver and Artie, but he absolutely is so jealous of them for reasons I will not get into for now. He has so much fun stuff in the story, but this video is not the place to get into it. But oh, someday I'll talk about Ebony. Tia would also be fine with it, happy even, but I don't think romance is their thing. Very much a big ol' arrow ace. I don't know, I forgot what the general term for a ruler is, but whatever it is, that's Tia. I think that Tia and Artie got close in the years after Artie first arrived into Capo, and just would be happy for him. And those years probably were the happiest in either of their lives, so what does that look like now that it's taken away? Moriarty's feelings about Denver are not romantic, even though he shows them as such. Very much just like, I know how to perform romance, but like the emotions are not there. I won't be talking about what Artie and Moriarty's dynamics are like, because the two never actually interact with each other. They're not the same person. I made this like whole complicated chart about it. It's not really that complicated. But, like, who is the same person, who is not? And so, like, Moriarty is Artie, but Artie is not Moriarty, and Moriarty is the fungal mushroom thing, but the fungal mushroom thing and Artie are not each other. I hope this chart clears that up. But Moriarty the elf is just the extension of the main mushroom growth that is the real Moriarty. It only took the name Moriarty Cord because that is Artie's full name, and as he became its mouthpiece, Moriarty felt fitting that he should have his name as well. Despite taking more people into the fold, how Moriarty feels about Denver may have been diluted compared to their first meeting, but hasn't changed too much in how he interacts with them. Moriarty finds Denver to be useful as their own existence has such a stationary place, so they still want to keep them close, but all affection towards Denver is that of a tool. Moriarty wants Denver around so long as they remain useful to them and compliant, and anything outside of that is just extra flavor in their growing self. I think when he was a newer Mushroom Hive Mind, having more animalistic feelings was overwhelming and even upsetting to Moriarty. That on top of a newly grieving Denver hanging around, but like with all mushrooms, it's just like probably a very shocking and disturbing, I don't know, I guess waking up from a nap, birth, I guess, I don't know. But either way, he quickly adapted to his situation and became the little manipulative, calm, annoyingly pleasant guy he is now. Moriarty has a very insidious, subtle manipulation he does with Denver. Denver wants to believe that maybe they can reverse what happened to Artie, find that cure for the divine that would turn Artie back to normal, and Moriarty takes advantage of this. He'll manipulate Denver into thinking that it could happen, but never overboard enough to make Denver turn on him. If Denver realizes that Light of Hope was as false as they come, they certainly would turn on Moriarty, and Moriarty just can't have that. He needs his hands and eyes on the outside. Denver, however, usually keeps their distance from Moriarty, even while they're around him, but catches themselves slipping when there are moments that feel too much like how things used to be. Deep down, they know they're not getting Artie back from this, but they can't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, they'll be able to see Artie again one last time. because that was the worst gift Artie had ever given Denver, was hope. And that's the end for this video. I have put Denver, Artie, and Moriarty on Unveil, and you guys can eventually see me build an Shindo page on there for them. Unlike with Toy House, which stores all of my characters, I want my Unveil to focus solely on projects I work on, so you can go check it out. Consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. I'm trying to get the channel monetized this year, and you watching this video this far helps me get closer to that goal. If you like my characters, well, you won't see these three in it, but you can go check out my webcomic In Harmony. Do you want more queer romance of the tragic kind with a monster or two thrown in? This may be the comic for you! You can read it for free down below. We're about halfway through the 4th chapter. It's a slow one, but I'm excited to show you guys where it goes. But if you are a reader and want to see pages 2 weeks early, then go check out my Patreon where I post early access to In Harmony pages. The sketches for those pages, concept art, and more are also up there. Patreons got to see some animation for my recent animation meme before it came out for everyone else, and I also continue posting animation whips early. I already know which one I'm going to work on next, and I am excited to start. I can't wait! Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!